Hello and welcome again to The Extra Point. I am Kendall Gammon, and today I'm joined by former Gorilla, former Buffalo Bill, Brian Moorman. Brian, first off, appreciate you joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You know what? We were talking earlier. Time flies. Last time we were around each other was darn near a decade ago. It didn't feel like that. I asked you how old your son was, Cooper, thinking 5, and you're like, he's 10 now. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But so The Extra Point, we talk about just, how we got to different places, our mindset and what's going on. I want to go back to college real quick. I mean, maybe even high school, because Tell me where you went to high school, then you came to Pittsburgh State University, but it's an interesting story. Let's go over that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Sedgwick, Kansas, which is a small town of about 1,000 people, which is probably about the size of my neighborhood now, which is
exactly
is ironic, right? So, grew up there, which I look back on now very fondly because some great friends that still live around there, and realize how great it was to grow up in an area like that where everybody kind of knows everybody and everybody takes care of everybody, and we create friendships and lifelong friendships. Yeah. And I even look at that and say how that really benefited me, and then I end up I'll say that I ended up at Pittsburgh State in small college, and I ended up in a small market in the NFL, and it was just like that's just what my path was meant to be, and so being able to grow up in Sedgwick was really it was really awesome, and looking back at that is I'm thankful for.
Well, and I wasn't too far from you. I was in Rose Hill, small community as well, 4A. You were probably 4A or maybe 3. You were 2A. Okay, so even smaller. Okay, so you ended up at Pittsburgh State. Now, again, for folks of you don't know, Brian was a punter for the Buffalo Bills for 12 years, and we'll get into some of those accolades, but all pro, Pro Bowl a couple years, both times. But you came to Pittsburgh State. It was not to play football. No,
I was recruited for track and field. Coach Russ Jewett recruited me, and I had never heard of Pittsburgh State. And ironic, I had driven through Pittsburgh, unbeknownst to me, to go to an AAU track meet in Joplin, which I had no idea where Joplin was, and I thought it was the longest drive ever. In high school, I was like, this is miserable. And then, Coach called me and introduced himself and told me about Pittsburgh State, said he wanted to bring me in on a visit. And my dream was to play football, Division I football for that matter. I wanted to play at K-State, and that was when they weren't any good at the time. Right. And then they got good, obviously, and I was like, well, shoot, I should be able to play for them.
Yeah, exactly.
But, they actually did end up offering me to say, well, you can walk on, and so and I had a football scholarship offer to Bethany College, which was an NAIA school, and then Coach Jewett offered me a track scholarship, and I thought, it's really important to me. I worked my tail off to get a scholarship, and I want to play in NCAA, and walking on just wasn't something I really wanted to do, and so I went down and visited with them and fell in love with Pittsburgh, fell in love with the campus, and it was beautiful. The track facilities were amazing. Coach was just the type of coach I wanted to run for, and I thought, all right, well, and I met with the football program, and at the time they couldn't do track scholarships. And they had all their football scholarships used up, and it couldn't go over. Now I think they can do something like that. But at the time, they're like, no, you got to wait a year and then walk on the next year. I was like, okay, I can do that. Right. And so, ironically, I ended up breaking my wrist, falling over a hurdle, and had a cast up to here, and said, well, I guess I won't play quarterback or receiver like I did. I'm a quarterback in high school, and I figured I'd play receiver or walk on as a quarterback or something. And so I took Coach Anton Stewart, who we both know very well, out and
Coach Ton.
Coach Ton, yeah. I kicked with him. I said, well, come out and watch me kick. Tell me if it's even worth my time. And I went out there in a cast up to here and kicked field goals. And he said, well, I think you'd be stupid not to come walk on and try out as a field goal kicker.
Interesting.
And there were 9 guys that walked on and 1 scholarship guy. And Josh Barkus was our scholarship guy. And everyone else was kicking field goals. He and I kind of were going at it, and he was so much better than me kicking field goals. Obviously, people know him well. And so I said, well, they had no punters. I'm like, well, I'll just punt. And so I picked up the ball and started punting, and luckily made the team. And so I punted and kicked off, and that's kind of where it all started.
Okay, so I want to go back a little bit also on the fact of, just recently I talked with Jeff Moorland, and he made mention of the fact that he was a senior, you were a freshman, you actually came up to him once and said, I think I want to walk on to football, and what do you think? And I mean, does this ring true with you? Do you remember this conversation at all?
Yeah, I mean, he was, at the time, because I walk on my second year, so I was a sophomore when I actually walked on. So I would talk to him when I was a freshman, met him, super great guy.
Yeah.
And then he played again that next year. It was a fifth year senior. Right. When I was a first year, I guess sophomore slash freshman.
Okay.
Freshman,
now
right?
at the time he said that you said you wanted to walk on, and he asked what position. You're like, well, QB or maybe wide receiver. And Jeff said he was thinking, well, I'm a QB, and he knew who the backup was. Then, as he tells it, you said, well, I punt, and he's like, you should punt. But I don't know. Do you remember it that way?
I don't remember that part of it.
Gotcha.
But obviously, I knew that it was going to be difficult for me with the wrist injury that I had to play quarterback again, and plus I didn't think Coach Jewett would be too happy with me,
True.
going and so. And I ended up actually, as we got halfway through the season, I missed it so much. I started, playing some receiver.
Really?
And I started kind of getting back into the groove, and then I jammed up my wrist again, and I was like, that's it, I'm just going to punt.
Okay.
So I did try it, but my fondest memory of Jeff Moorman was we had gone through the whole season together, and I'd had a good year punting, and surprisingly, and that was the year we went to the national championship in '95.
Right.
And that's heck, you walk on a team and then you end up going to the national title game. It was a pretty cool experience for a small town kid, and we had a team meeting, and Jeff had this ball, and he walked up to me and he said, hey, I want you to sign this ball because you're going to play in the NFL one day. And I laughed at him. I was like, Jeff, you're crazy, and I said, well, thanks,
Yeah.
And I appreciated that, but that stuck with me. And it's just part of that, trying to believe in yourself and taking a compliment, but then also thinking, you know what? Yeah, I think I could. Never really. You
hadn't given it a thought up until then, had you?
Given it a thought. No, I never would have thought. Okay, yeah, I'm going to play. I never really dreamed of playing and being a punter.
What's interesting is Jeff. Being the QB. I mean, punters and specialists sometimes we're off on the side a little bit. But as he mentioned, you were part of the group, just like I was part of the group, and everything. But the one thing that I'm not sure you realize is he goes. Everybody on the team, I mean, we watched him punt the whole year. He said it was ridiculous. I mean, he didn't even realize how good he was. He was just doing what he did.
Well, he's probably right, because I just like to go out and kick the ball as far and as high as I could, and
exactly.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was dropping the ball like with two hands, and that was how I was when I got into the NFL. I was still dropping the ball like that, and special teams coach that signed me out of Seattle, Pete Rodriguez, he's like, all right, I need to change. You need to change a few things, and I was lucky enough that I was in training camp with Jeff Fiegel, which to this day, he helped me kind of change a few things in my drop, and I just became more consistent. Had a really good training camp there, and they brought me back again. I got an injury the second training camp, so I really wasn't able to compete against him because he's one of the best ever. And then went back to Europe and ended up in Buffalo. So
and you won the World Bowl in Europe, is that correct? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that was a great experience, and I wish they still had that league for guys, especially punters, kickers, and quarterbacks.
They really do need it for a lot of. They needed it for officials too. I spoke with Mark Hittner. I don't know if you know Mark Hittner, but he's a gorilla. He's been a head linesman in the league for 24 years, and he talked about how important that was also. But
even broadcasters. Troy Aikman did one of my games over there. And
did he really?
Yeah, I've still got a picture of us talking on the sideline, just shooting the breeze.
How about?
And now look at him. So it was.
Yeah, he's done okay for himself.
He's okay. Yeah.
He's all right. Wow. Okay, so it's amazing to me. I mean, for me, I didn't start long snapping until my third year in college. And I was just screwing around. Coach saw that I could do it better than anybody else, and lo and behold, I was doing it. And I really didn't want to at the time. And I think it's so amazing. Sometimes we don't really understand the full capabilities we have until maybe a situation dictates or somebody else notices something in us that we don't notice ourselves.
Oh, no question. I think a lot of times it's just, continuing to do the things day in and day out and trying to just better yourself. I look back on, little things that happened that, changed, and, having great coaches and, and mentors and so forth, and people that believe in you. And I've always been a big believer that, confidence breeds confidence. And if somebody has confidence in me, it gives me a little bit extra confidence in myself. And, that goes all the way. I can remember when I finally signed a long-term contract with the Bills. And then the next year I had, probably my best year ever, because I just didn't feel that, I wasn't pressing as much. So if you can find a way not not to press every time. You're going to be a lot smoother and at anything that you're trying to do. And so it's just trying to make sure, whether it's just be confident in yourself and try and keep, try and better yourself a little bit every day.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because I'm not sure people always realize the fact of, in the NFL and especially in our job, I mean, you have a bad game, we have a contract, but we really don't. Unless you got some money up front or something's guaranteed, which rarely happens. So it's a pressure-filled situation, and it's really easy to get caught up in your head and wonder what's going on. And you say that. I was the same way. There was only a couple of years of my career where I really didn't feel the pressure of making the team. I knew I was going to make the team. And I always said that sometimes, and I'm curious what you think, sometimes I practice out of wanting to be the best, and sometimes, probably more so, I practiced out of fear of failure. Did that ever go your way?
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I mean, and you talk about the pressure pact. It's not just the games, it's practice, especially as a specialist. I mean, we don't only get, I might only get 8 reps in practice, and then of course I might only get 4 reps in a game. So, I mean, practice is just as important, because we'll go up and watch film with the coach, and if you have a bad day where you shank 3 out of 8 punts, and maybe your hang time on the other, 3 of the others are okay, and you have 2 good ones, they're like, hey, what's going on? Your consistency is lacking, and they don't care how windy it is. You know, they want to see good punts, and they want to see it, because they're trying to practice the coverage and everything else. So it's important. You get screamed at because you're messing up the coverage practice. That's the most important. So there were many days I came home stressed out, and Amber, my wife, saying, what's wrong? I was like, God, I can't find it right now. It's just, and all the way up, sometimes, it could go all the way up to a pregame where you have just the worst pregame ever, and you walk in your locker and you sit there like this and say, whew, I got to get my act together. So
that's interesting. We got a couple things to unpack there, but one being the fact of, I mean, it's like golf. I mean, you don't work on your game on the golf course. You play the game that came with you that day. This happened to me several times where I'm not snapping well, and I'm like, okay, I've got to figure this out, because we're playing this game no matter what. I can remember Morton Anderson, in the Hall of Fame, played 25 years, which is in and of itself just a crazy thing in the NFL. I remember a couple times in pregame, he's like, Kendall, I don't know what's going on. I can't hit it. I'm like, dude, you're going to be fine. He goes, no, seriously, I'm not hitting anything. I'm like, dude, your body knows. At this time, I think it was maybe 20 years. I said, you've been playing 18, 20 years. Your body's going to know what to do. Just keep going at it. He's like, okay. And he came in there, and lo and behold, he did that, which was, just somebody calming him down a little bit. But I'm sure you're the same way too. You're just like, okay, I'm not striking it the way I want to strike it today, but I've got to figure out a way to get through this game, and we'll figure it out from the film afterwards. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes those were some of my best games, because you just say, you just gotta let it go. Like you said, this game's going on with or without me. So I've got to punt, and and at some point, and then you just go out there and you try and figure it out right before the game. And if you hit a couple good ones, stop there and wait for the next one, your first one on in the game. And so and again, you build your confidence throughout the day. And if you miss hit one, my philosophy was always, you give yourself about 2 minutes. You can be as angry as you want, but you got to let it go.
So. Yeah, I remember people always asked me how I dealt with it and having to be perfect every time. And like, I was never perfect. And to me, perfection was consistency. If I was consistent, that was perfection. And the other thing too was, I wasn't paid to be perfect every time. I was paid to be consistent, but then also to come back and not let one poor snap turn into 2 or 3. I mean, I think that's something that people have such a hard time with sometimes, is they keep looking back. I do this myself in my own life right now. I struggle with some things, is you keep looking back, then all of a sudden you run into things going forward because you're not paying attention. And the fact is, you can't change the past.
Yep. That's very true. And so that, to your point, I had multiple coaches always, most important punt is your comeback punt. If you're going to miss hit one, you better have a good comeback. And that's key. You just got, because you got to forget about the past and move on and move forward. So there's so many things in life that can be learned from kicking.
You're not kidding.
And snapping.
So I want to go back and pack a few other things too. You talked about going to Seattle, Jeff Fiegels. I remember when you went out there the first year and did well, but I mean, Jeff Fiegels He's one of the better punters in the league ever, all time. I don't know how many years he played. Was it up over 20?
I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think we had Lawrence Tynes on here, and he played with Lawrence. And Lawrence talked about learning so many different things from Jeff while he was there. And then the second year, you went back to Seattle. I remember thinking, I didn't understand because I'm like, I think Fiegel's, I mean, he's going to keep staying there. But when I hear you talking, you're like, you feel like that's something that was maybe instrumental in your career, even though this was a guy that you weren't beating out at the time.
Right, yeah, and I think, looking back at the end of my career, even as the career went on, I remember having this conversation with my wife saying, well, I'm not getting this job. She goes, they didn't bring you back for nothing. I was like, oh. And I look back now, and I think that he was in his 12th or 14th year at the time.
Which it normally would be towards the end, you're right.
Yeah, so they were looking to try and find, and Holmgren, believe it or not, he actually talked to me a lot, and I thought, wow, this is really cool.
Interesting.
And he pulled me aside after my first training camp and said, hey, I'm putting you on the practice squad. I know punters aren't usually put on the practice squad. But,
I didn't know that. Okay.
And then they had some injuries, and it didn't work out. And they're not, a spot for a punter is not, except for COVID year, everybody's on the practice squad.
Exactly right now, absolutely.
But they did stick by their guns and reallocated me to Europe again, or re-signed me after that. And actually, that was the first year I went to Europe, and so I came back and went at it again. But I still never, I wish I'd have gone into it saying I'm winning the job this year. But instead, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn a little bit more because I had this opportunity to learn from such a great punter. And I never really looked at it as I'm coming here to win this job. I looked at it as I'm trying to audition for the other 31 teams.
Which is true. We always talk about the eye in the sky, don't lie. Yeah. And because people always ask at the end of the year, they're like, oh, they're not trying, they're not winning. And you and I both know this, which is, it doesn't matter. You're on tape for the next year for the team you're with and for the 31 other teams. You're playing for a job the next year.
And I just did not understand for the life of me why older guys didn't want to talk. And I was like, well, why don't we hang out more, and teach me all this stuff? But then later on, when I'm a 12 and 13 year guy, and you got this guy coming in trying to outkick you all the time, you're like, nah. Because we have this window of trying to prove myself for like the first 3 years, and then I had this kind of honeymoon period of went to the Pro Bowl and all this thing to your point, a few years where I wasn't worried about not making the team. Right. Then you get to the end of your career and you're trying to prove yourself again.
Exactly right.
And you're pressing a little bit, and it's getting a little harder. And I tell you, I learned a lot from Fiegel mentally and from physically as far as punting. But it was good. It was a good experience those first couple.
Well, I would think you needed to learn a lot and get mentally tough because you spent your career in Buffalo. And I'm not getting on Buffalo per se, but it's not great weather. I mean, I think there's a lot of punters and kickers' careers that have died in Buffalo because that is not the greatest weather in the world. Number one, to be there 12 years, I think.
13.
13 years. Yeah. That in and above itself is pretty impressive. Then the fact to be all pro a couple years and make the Pro Bowl a couple years. Just talk about that. Is it as much as I'm making it seem, or am I over?
We had some really, really windy games. It does get really windy. It seems like global warming has done really well for Buffalo. I look up there, I'm like, God, the wind never blows anymore.
Exactly right.
But, and not making light of it, but we had some, I can remember I set my helmet down in the middle of the field and it started, we were playing the Rams, and it started blowing across the field. And I thought, that's going to be a rough day, and so, you just try and figure it out and go and stick with your form and your technique and it goes. But again, that's one of those things that I think it was just the path that was meant for me, is because I was able to succeed at that, and it was able to, I was able to continue to have a long career because, small market and being able to actually punt in the weather, they don't typically want to move through guys, and it was great. I mean, it's just like a second hometown to me now, and it's a fantastic place, a lot of great people, and the weather's not near as bad as people think it is.
Gotcha. Okay. So, well, I would say this: my one Buffalo, I've got several Buffalo stories, but the one that I can tell right now is the fact is it was so windy once that I was snapping the ball outside the frame of the punter, and let him know that, and so that he was going to basically catch a curveball. Yeah. So if you don't know, for me, I'm snapping the ball, it's going to be somewhere between the knees and the shoulders and the strike zone in this area, and I was snapping the ball this far out to one side because the wind was blowing crossways enough that it was going to bring it back in. That messed with me a little bit. That was kind of a crazy time.
Well, so that's against all things
logic,
that Yeah, all logic for snapping, and it's similar to punting. I mean, or even field goal kickers, they don't want to kick outside the uprights. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, if you hit a good end over end ball into the wind in that stadium, the way it swirls, it was fun to watch other kickers come in and they wouldn't be able to figure that out. Mm-hmm. So you don't necessarily have to get outside the uprights there. It's just you just got to hit a good ball and it'll go.
Interesting. Kind of like golf if you pure it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Make a difference. this is a part where we talk about some of the things that you've done in your life that make a difference. Specifically, I want to talk about the punt formation, something that you dealt with in Buffalo your entire career and still involved with a little bit right now.
Yeah. We started the Punt Foundation in 2004.
And PUNT stands for?
Perseverance, Understanding, Need, and Triumph.
Okay.
So it benefits children battling childhood cancer.
Wow.
And I started. I met a young man, we were making Christmas cards. I met a young man in the field house and named Taylor Speth, and we sat there and we were making a card and got to know his parents and said, I want to come see you, when you have your treatments or other patients. And so I started going up to Roswell Park Cancer Institute there in Buffalo on days off, on Tuesdays.
Wow.
And, just one thing led to another, started seeing some need. And so we said, I always wanted to start a charity. I think it's just have a platform, have a voice,
right.
And always tried to be involved at Pitt State too,
yes.
Whether it was, because they always try and get the sports teams involved in the community. It's such a great community, so it was kind of ingrained in me anyway. And so got to know a lot of families and a lot of kids, and started to see, talking to nurses and doctors and seeing need and things that needs that weren't being addressed, and more psychosocial needs that
right.
It wasn't so much that we were going to give to research as much as try and make their lives a little better. Put a smile on their face.
And understand.
And so we just kind of started small and started with one event, and then ended up starting a new event, which continues to this day. Obviously, this year didn't happen with COVID, but we have a wine pairing dinner every year that has done really well, and started really small, and now has done. It's been, I think this is going to be our 14th year for that. We've been in, so we're going to be 16 years for the foundation.
Wow.
And it's staying strong. We've got a great team up there that it continues doing, all of our programs, which is multiple programs, from direct financial assistance to a bereavement program for families that have unfortunately lost their children, which and so direct financial assistance could be rent payments, could be bills, could be funeral expenses,
right?
And even another program of ours, our Adopt a Family program, over the holidays, the community just comes out in droves and support, and it helped. I believe it was 77 families, which is such a great feeling to know that kids are having a great Christmas, and not just the children that are battling, because it's a family thing.
Right.
Parents and siblings, they're all going through it together. So it's really powerful to see them, be able to have a Christmas that they didn't think they were going to have. So
if folks want to learn more, the website would be what?
Just puntfoundation.org.
Puntfoundation.org. Okay.
Yeah. And so since I've retired, it's I'm really proud of how it's continued to go. Guys on the team. There's still a couple guys that I played with that are left on the team. Lee Smith and is a big proponent of our foundation. He was when I was there, and he promised me when I left, and he's like, hey, don't you worry, it's in good hands. I'm going to take good care of it.
That's cool.
He has done.
That's good stuff.
Right. So Corey Bahorka, as the punter now, is very involved. Dawson Knox is tight end, and he's very involved. So it just goes to show you what great character the Buffalo Bills have, and it's always been big in Buffalo, and I've always been proud to be a Buffalo Bill. And these guys continue to carry it on, and so much so that Lee and those guys, they put together a pledge for the guys on the team, and they raised over $60,000 just from the Bills, just for the foundation, to help these kids.
That's amazing.
Last year, so that just speaks volumes, and pay it forward.
Kudos. No, absolutely.
So they're a great group, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that they've continued to move that cause forward, and very proud of where that's gone. And
very cool. Well, you're definitely making a difference, and that's a really nice one. Okay, so I want to kind of, I say it all the time, I'm like a This Is Us episode. I'm all over the place. So we're going to go back to college a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I want people to understand for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because we have a great football program at Pitt State. We have a great track program also, and you're a big part of that. You are arguably the most decorated athlete to come out of Pittsburgh State. When you look at all the national championships you won in the different running events, and then what you did, how many times All-American were you in football as a punter?
I think 4.
4. That's what I thought. Okay, I was just making sure.
I think
4. Yeah. I mean, it's like that's something you come to play track. I know you walk on. You had football in your background a little bit, but that's amazing. Just when you look back at it, do you ever just shake your head and I mean, what comes to mind? I'm curious. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I want to know, I mean, isn't it close to 10 types of national championships you've had? And I mean, you're in the hurdles. You still have records there today.
James McCarty, my roommate and the best man at my wedding, we still hold the 110-meter high hurdle record together.
Wow.
It was so ironic and funny because I never would have thought that I would have been able to get it in the high hurdles. The 400 hurdles was really my event.
Yep.
But I'm pretty honored to be able to go up there and see our name on the board still at the Placer Center, and it's pretty cool. But we still hold that one. But All-Americans I think was like 12, but that's when you place at nationals, that's when you get your All-American accolades for track. But 3 national titles in the 400 hurdles, and then the high hurdle record. So it was hard to get that 400 hurdle record. Denzel Morgan was an Olympian for Jamaica that was on our team, which obviously made me better.
Wow.
And so I just missed that from him. He did that at the Jamaican trials, and I ran mine in he was I believe 49.1 and I was 49.7, so I was close, but hard to compete. But I got to tell you, just being in a program like that Coach Jewett put together and continues year in and year out. I mean, if you look at what Pitt State track has done, especially over the last 5 years, I mean, with the women and the men both, and it's one of the best programs in the country. I mean, if there's a kid looking to go run track in college, they'd be
selling yourself short if you don't look there.
Don't consider it.
And I mean, you've got to be proud. I mean, the facilities are phenomenal.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, I mean, you just, it would have been amazing to have that. But we had good facilities, I thought then.
Right.
But to have the 300-meter track and the infield and everything that they've got there with the football field there to be able to train on that too. It's the facilities are great and they're second to none. And and it's shown and it's helped that program and it's helped Coach make it even more successful than it already was. So, but I had great teammates, and you asked that, about having success, and we went out and competed every day.
Right.
I mean, every track practice we would compete against each other, and I think that's what it was about. We made each other better. After, it was a race every time we stepped on the track.
Yep.
And those guys, James, Charlie Gilmore and Dinsdale, and I could go down the list. We got on the track, we raced.
Right.
And we got better at every practice, and that's the only reason why I was successful. That and Coach sticking by me. I mean, it was a bit of a, he allowed me to play football, and he allowed me to continue to do both things, and he worked through me, and he did a great job of coaching each person individually, because I think everybody's body is different, and he knew, if my hamstring wasn't right, he knew when to back me off and when to work through it, and it worked. And I owe a lot to him for just being able to be, so flexible and knowing how to coach me, and not just on that, but also in the technique and the hurdles. He's one of the best hurdle coaches around. Okay,
so that may take me into this other segment, which I call the power of gratitude. Just being thankful for things that have happened in our life or people in our life. When I say that to you, times, events, people, what are some things that you're thankful for?
Oh, just so many. I mean, I've been blessed to be around just great coaches, teachers, and just people in general. I mean, and to, I look back at things where people have supported me and helped me believe in myself. And, it'd be hard for me to sit here and name names, all along the way. But because I've had so many good coaches, I mean, at every level. I think back to high school and how the coaches would pull me aside and say, hey, straighten up, do this, get on the right path, and you're not doing what you should be doing, and it hitting home, and then getting into college and having the opportunities that I had there, and then getting in the NFL too, and some of the special teams coaches I had, with Bobby April, which well, and Danny Smith, both great coaches, special teams coaches that I had that were integral in my NFL career, and then people in the community. We talked about the foundation and the doctors and nurses and the people, the donors that I've met. So many good people out there that you learn a lot from. People have huge hearts and are willing to give back, and to be able to be a part of that is so gratifying, and really helps you just kind of realize how lucky you are.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's well put. So we're towards the end. I just want to catch people up on you now if they don't know. We're down here in Florida. You live in the Jacksonville area.
Yeah.
You married your wife Amber. Married how many years? I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
20 this last year, so 21 in July.
21. Very awesome.
Yeah.
And you've got a 10-year-old boy by the name of Cooper.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's Ponte Vedra Beach, so home of the Players Championship.
Yeah.
Probably 5 minutes from the our neighborhood is.
I drove by it on the way here.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a right and go in there, and was scheduled to play it, but it didn't work out. But all the same, pretty neat place.
It's a beautiful area to live, and my family all lives here now. My parents have moved to Florida. My sister lives here, and my nephews obviously, and so it's good. We missed Kansas, but my in-laws still live in Pittsburgh.
So you get to get back. That's
good. Get to come back to Pitt State quite a bit, and I get to see Coach Jewett and my buddies that are still there, and James and those guys. So it's great. It's just a perfect setup, for me. But we live down here. I sell residential real estate now. Own Sotheby's International Realty brokerage. So I do luxury real estate, and it's gone really, really well. People obviously like to move to Florida, so it's been good. And specialize in this Ponte Vedra Beach and the beaches area. So if anybody's looking,
if anybody's looking, you know where to come. Absolutely.
You can Google me, you'll find me.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. I've known you for a long time. Followed your career. We played at the same time for a while. I can remember you even called me a couple times for some advice with not yourself, obviously, because I don't punt, but some snappers you had and some questions, and I remember that, and just good things. I learned so much from you because getting in the league the way you did, a couple of years out of it before you actually made it in, people don't realize for the most part it used to be you just didn't come into the league as a punter or a kicker. It took some time.
It would often take 2 or 3 years, and I knew that going in. That's part of the reason why I probably didn't think that I was going to make it in Seattle. And looking back, you probably ought to always, never take for granted the position you're in, because press forward and do your best, because you just don't know what. You don't know what the future holds. What's on the other side.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a true pleasure. I appreciate it very much. He is Brian Moorman. I am Kendall Gammon, and this has been The Extra Point. Thanks.